Welcome to the Live Greater podcast. Thank you so much for coming back and joining us. Today we have an awesome guest on from Sint Maarten. That is Nicole Parchani or Parchani. So excited for her to be here. Welcome, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to have this conversation and kind of share, a bit about my life and journey and growing up in the beautiful Caribbean. So, yeah, super excited to be here and kind of just dive into it.
Yeah, it'll be great. So right now you're in Washington, right? So what are
Yes.
you doing in Washington to start off?
Yeah, so I'm a hardware engineer for Surface, so it's like my day job. So I do a lot of like hardware engineering work. My background is actually electrical engineering, so it's kind of what I do, I would say, like most days. So that's why I'm out here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. Definitely can't complain. Just a little far from home.
Yeah. So do you travel often with your work then?
Not currently. I think like with the pandemic, it's kind of been a bit different. But I do get to go home a bit more recently. I was back home like in March to speak at a women's empowerment gala, which was pretty awesome. But yeah, anytime I get to go home, honestly, it's a great time just because there's something about that island that's just like very magical. Like it's a very different experience than living over here, but it's giving me perspective on like things that I think when I was a kid, I just did not even realize were like blessings right in front of my face.
Right, right. You take for granted what's always right there in front of you sometimes. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So you're a native of the island of Saint Martin. So, and what language do they speak there?
So the island has three official languages. So depending on what side of the island you're on, I was born on the Dutch side, which is the southern half of the island, and the northern half is French. So because of that, we have three official languages, technically, Dutch, French, and English. Most people will speak English. So like if you're there on vacation, like the language barrier is not really a thing. But like on the French side, it's definitely more European, I would say, in flavor. The Dutch side's a lot more like just like rebellious sort of melting pot of cultures and people and chaos. And like yeah, I would say it's a very interesting, I think, blend of personalities and like people. So
Yeah, and I mean, it's not a very big island, correct?
not at all. It's only 37 square miles. And
Wow.
that's split between both the north and the south. And so it's technically two countries on one island.
Hmm.
But we have like people from all over the world. So like you can, even though we have three official languages, there's like over 100 different nationalities there. So you can find, your people for sure, no matter where you're from. So that's definitely been one of the, I think, blessings that I looking back, I'm like so fortunate that I had those experiences of like meeting people and understanding different cultures and all of that. So,
That's awesome. So, tell us a little bit about your childhood. How would it be to live on your island?
yeah. So I was born, I would say like on the cusp of the millennium. So it was like a 90s, like late 90s baby. And around that time, like the island was definitely, I think, like in its boom of like tourism, where it was just like a lot of fun times, a lot of like cultural celebrations. My parents worked in two different industries. My mom worked in the banking world, and my father was a jeweler and then went into his own like retail business. And it was very interesting, I think, like just being in a multicultural household because my father's Indian and my mother is from a different island, and just like growing up in both of those cultures, and then also just like finding my identity as a St. Martiner because there's just so many different types of St. Martiners, like no two look alike or are alike. So it's just like I think growing up on an island is just an incredible childhood, just in and of itself,
Yeah.
being so close to nature, being in the sun, just like having the access to all those different cultures. It definitely, I think, made me so adaptable, but also just like willing and easy to connect with people because I always sort of have this like openness to just understanding what people are like and what their cultures are like. But yeah, I definitely like absolutely enjoyed having my childhood, just being able to go to the beach, being able to like eat incredibly good food. I think the food I probably was spoiled with the most because like there the food is just so good. And the weather is so good that you just don't realize like what you have. And there's like a rawness about the people on that island that I think is so rare to find. And like, I don't know, I'm just like, I'm so proud to be from there, and like my childhood was just like so phenomenal. But like when you're a kid, I don't think you know any better. You're kind of just like, you know, you go through your teenage years and you're kind of just like, I want to get off of this island. Like I was just kind of over it,
Mhm.
because I was like very much into technology. There's not a lot of people that share those same interests back home, so it was just like very like, these people don't get me, you know, like I want to go to the land of opportunity. I want to go do like great things. And I did all that, but I realized like in that process, like how important home was to me, and like all the things that like I really took for granted, because St. Martin's so small, it's so hard, I think, to find our culture outside of the island. Like it's very much like you have to be there to really experience it in its fullness. Like when you're abroad, it's kind of hard to like find a TV show, you know, that you could watch. It's like, oh, like this is what we watch on the island, because things like that don't exist. But I think my generation is trying to change that. So hopefully there'll be more content about the country, because it's like content gold is what I say. They're just like, their personality is incredible. So I'm blessed to even just know, but it's just like I would love to be able to have more people be aware of just how awesome the people there are, because they're pretty cool. They're pretty cool. I will say that.
That's awesome. So do you is it high tourist there for that island, or is it a low tourist island?
I would say it's like tourism is the economy of St.
Okay.
Martin. So like that's pretty much how the island makes a lot of its, you know, income from abroad is through tourism. So it's like a very popular tourist destination, partially because it does have like an international hub airport, and we have like the port,
Oh, wow.
and there's just like a lot of, like, St. Martin is like the party island, you know, it's like it's everything you're looking for kind of in one small rock. You can definitely get there. And I think that's why people are drawn to it, because you can go to the north and have a very like European experience. Like it's very French, you know, there's a like they use euros, like you'll get your fresh pastries, and like the signs and everything are very much in line with like what you would experience if you were in France. Whereas like the southern half is a lot more like, even though it is a Dutch territory, like territory, a part of the kingdom, it's not as closely tied to the Netherlands. So it's like there's a lot more like just expression of different types of people. That makes it just a very interesting experience. It's like you can get that relaxation, kind of like blocking out the world vibe, or you can just like do whatever you want and just have a great time, and nobody's really gonna like bother you or do anything like that. So yeah, it definitely has a bunch of different things just depending on what you're looking for.
Sounds pretty awesome. Sounds inviting. Very
It
inviting.
definitely is. Like St. Martin will welcome anybody with open arms. I think for them it's just like that whole melting pot like culture of just like trying to be accepting, trying to be inclusive, and just have a good time. I think for me, I noticed that the community is all about enjoying life, which I think is something that's so important, you know, to really enjoy life and not just like be working or like in a rut, just really enjoying life for what it is. So it's definitely a great place for that if that's what you're looking for, you know.
So is it a slower paced society? Like where they just kind of more chill, not a busy hurry, let's get to
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely like a work hard, play harder vibe to it.
okay.
I will definitely say, like, having been in the States for so long and going back home, it definitely feels like you're taking a load off. You know, like everything is like there's no rush to do anything. It's kind of just like we'll get there when we get there. Which I think is like, for me, I didn't realize that I enjoyed the slow life as much as I do, because like I think here, because the American economy is so fast paced and there's quarters and you know you have things to achieve, it's a lot more like planned out, and like there's things to be done and things to solve and things to work on, whereas there it's kind of just like they're just vibing, you know, they're just going with the flow, they're just enjoying the day for what it is, which I think like I would love society to be more like that, you know, just because I think like otherwise we miss out on like all the little joys that we experience in our life because we're so caught up in like the next thing or what we have to do tomorrow. And there it's really just about enjoying the company that you have, and just like, yeah, like having a good time with the people that you love, which is so important. Like I feel like we don't like realize how important that is.
Yeah, we bring in a lot of things into life that just keeps us busy, and it's not the core things that we need to be focusing on to really make us
Yeah,
happy.
exactly. 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 Exactly.
So okay, I don't think of a person being an engineer from the Caribbean, right? That just because of the vibe that you get from an island and stuff.
Yeah.
So when you left, I mean, you mentioned that that really changed your perspective. So how was that for you leaving the island and doing your engineer career?
Yeah, it's funny because as a kid, my dream was always to come to the US. Like, I don't know, like because St. Martin doesn't have a lot of its own content, a lot of the media that I grew up watching was like Disney Channel and like American movies and stories. And for me, it like painted this picture of opportunity. And like I always loved like sci-fi and all of that stuff, but I honestly didn't really know what I wanted to do as a child. Like I was very like into a lot of different things. I would always be that kid that was like, oh, my friend wants to do this, I'll do that too. I think we could do this together. Like maybe we'll go to school, we'll have a little pack, it'll be great. But it was really just because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I had so many passions, and I was just kind of like, I don't know. But I knew I always wanted to go to the US. I didn't know how it was gonna happen. But I knew that's where I really wanted to go. And it was interesting because I think growing up watching American media and like watching American news, you kind of create like this image of what you think the American experience is like. And then you get there and it's like completely different. And I think for me, like I didn't realize that it was going to be that different because I went to an American high school. Like there were a lot of Americans on the island. It's not like I had never met one before. Like I knew what the culture was about, but I think like the hard part was for me becoming a minority for the first time. Like I don't think when I left the island, I realized like what a minority experience really was. Like despite being, of mixed race and like growing up in a very diverse like island, for me diversity was just the norm. Like it was okay to be look different from the people around you, because like in my high school class all of my peers were like of a different race or a different mix of races, so it was fine. Like just like I was just me, I was just Nicole, the nerd, and I just loved to learn, was like obsessed with all of that. But then when I came to the States, it was the first time that people were projecting this narrative of like, you're a minority and like this is what minorities experiences are like. And it was just very difficult for me because I was like, I don't identify with this label. Like I don't identify with being viewed this way, but the
Right.
people around me, like this was their struggle, like this was their life. And so it was interesting, I think, for me trying to find my tribe. Like when I moved to the States, I moved to Michigan. So I was studying at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, a very beautiful college town, had never visited the school. And for me, I think it was just like getting comfortable being myself in a place that was so different from what I knew. And the people there had like their own baggage and their own way of looking at things that was just very like different from like how things were on the island. And I realized like engineering was, I think, a good thing because it kept me disciplined and focused. Like I knew what I had to do and sort of like what I had to execute. Why I chose engineering, I honestly think it was a leap of faith because it was like I applied to a bunch of different schools. It was either I was going to go to business school or I was going to go to be an engineer. And the reason I wanted to be an engineer was because on the island nobody understands technology. Like I
Oh,
could
yeah.
not ask anybody like how to code, how a computer works. Like they would be like, what are you talking about? But for me, like I was just so deeply interested in these things, and I wanted to understand them. And I figured I really wanted to, like, as a kid, my dream was like build a tech company. So I was like, oh, like I want to actually know what the engineers know. I don't want to just be like a business person that's like pushing, market agendas, but has no clue what technology actually is, or like how do you build it, what is possible. So I was like, let me go and like learn that stuff. I'm good at math. It can't be that bad, right? Like, no. And growing up on the island, like there was no robotics class, there was no like anything like that. So for me it was just like, well, I've never tried anything like this, like let's give it a shot and see kind of what we like. And then I got there, and again, everything sort of changed. Like I realized mechanical engineering was just not for me. Even though building robots were cool, it was just not really jiving with what I was interested in. I ended up choosing electrical engineering, which is the hardest degree you could take, which I was trying to avoid. It was just like the material just spoke so deeply to me, like learning about energy, learning about how we modulate energy to create all of these different experiences, from like us being able to transmit this data just from this podcast is all through like energy modulation. The sounds that we hear, like the visuals that we see, all of that was like super interesting to me because it explained reality to some degree. It was like helping me understand the world and how it worked. And as someone that's like deeply curious, like it just like fed my curiosity, and I would have more and more questions. And then somehow I ended with a degree. I was just like, how did we get here? I couldn't tell you. Yeah, that's kind of how it all like worked out. I definitely think like I'm glad I came to the US, but it definitely, I think, helped me appreciate the island a lot more, because there were things that I just kind of took for granted, like I said, that honestly, like I think I couldn't imagine not having grown up there and not having had those experiences, because they are honestly what makes me an even better engineer. It's because like I have all of that culture behind me. It gives me like a very unique lens, which I think just makes like work a lot more fun. So
That's so cool. So can you share a little bit about your nonprofit that you do? Because I mean, you deal with energy and things. And so it's kind of connecting for me with what you're saying right here about engineering. So will you?
yeah. Yeah. So like for me, I realized, well, going to study in the United States is a privilege. You know, it's very much a privilege for people from my island. And I realized in my journey, just trying to become an engineer, it was very difficult. I remember, despite having like the best grades that I could possibly get, the financial aid department on the island told me, like, you know, I don't think you have what it takes to be an engineer. You know, like, they really were just like, I don't know if like this is a degree you should do. Maybe you should study something else, because they just did not see that it was possible for someone from the island to achieve something like that, which was very heartbreaking for me as a child, because it's all I ever wanted, you know? So it's like, imagine like that's your dream, and then the people who can hold your dream are like, I don't think you should do that. And that, like, for me was just a heartbreaking experience, and trying to figure out how to fund my education was a real challenge. You know, finding scholarships for people on St. Maarten is just like non-existent. And I realized when I was in college, I took like an entrepreneurship class, and they were like, you know, like, think about the problems that you face or the problems that you think deserve to be solved. And I was like, well, I realized for me, like, it's really unfair. Well, not even unfair. I realized like a lot of the American students that I were around, even the ones that were from low income families, had tons of resources to help them get their degree, which was absolutely fabulous. And I was just like, well, what could I do to help the people that are coming up after me? Because even though like now I'm in this position of privilege, you know, working at Microsoft, how can I help make it easier for the person that has similar interests or completely different interests, where nobody else on the island seems to understand why they want to do that, but it's something that like makes their spirit just like burst, you know, with just like love and joy and excitement. And so I started EmpowerU really with the goal of helping to amplify, you know, helping, giving opportunity, helping to show people that there is a path forward and you have support to help get you there. And even though like, you know, I still consider us a new and like a niche org, it's still incredible to see the impact you can have in someone's life by just helping them pay for their degree, helping them show like, hey, like, I know you really want this, and you don't have to completely worry about the financial burden, because for a lot of people, they never even make it off the island. Or, you know, with COVID and Hurricane Irma, like for a lot of people, their dreams to study abroad were like put on pause or delayed or just completely erased, just because like they don't have the financial means to do this. And so I figured, you know, my mom always raised me with like the thing of like, you can do whatever you want. And my grandparents always instilled in me, like, always remember where you come from, and don't forget like that it takes a village, you know, to raise a child, to like help you get to where you are. And I figured, why not just start now? I was just like, this is a life's journey. Like, if I can at least start now, yeah, it might take time, but at least I'm helping along the way. And it's only going to get better and better as I go along. So I was like, screw it. Let's just give it a shot. Let's build a nonprofit. Let's see where it goes. And so far, it's just been like so incredible to be able to help people. Right now, we're going through our scholarship review. So it's like just incredible to hear the stories of people that and what they want to do with their life, and like how, just getting a scholarship helps make that more feasible for them. And I don't know, it just like makes me so grateful to even be able to do that for them, because that's all I ever wanted, was just to have somebody care enough to be like, I got you. Like, I know it's a bit, but I got you. I'm here to help you. So that's all I'm trying to do.
That's a powerful give back. That is so awesome. You're paying it forward that way. So how
Yeah, we got
is it
to.
is it for just those who are on your island, or how does your organization work? How can people find out more
Yeah.
about it?
Yeah, so we have our website. It's like EmpowerU.online. Empower you with the letter U, not the word, just because I get that can be confusing. But no, we support like just the Caribbean in general, and even like minorities in the US. We were founded in Washington, so it's not like I wouldn't help out people if they wanted to seek our help. It's just that because St. Martin is a specific case where they really are like under-resourced, like I focus predominantly on like that culture and those people, but it's not exclusive at all. Like, if our first scholarship winner was from actually Trinidad, which is great to see that we're supporting, other islands within the region. But for me, it's like the more funds we're able to raise, the more we can help. And for me, it's like, it's just going to be a growth process. Like, every year has just been better and better. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. But if anybody, yeah, if you need help with like figuring out your career or just like school, definitely reach out to us. We're here to help, in any way that we can. So
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And I wanted to talk a little bit about I saw on your website about you talking about vibrations. And then you mentioned that
yeah.
with your career, and then just your field of vibrations, and how it is amazing how the podcast is transferred, or our voice, or any of that. So can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, for me, energy is like my obsession. I honestly, it's funny because it's like something I've always been obsessed with, but I've had like peaks and valleys with this journey. When I was a kid, I was like very interested, but then I had a lot of like shame and just like, you want to fit in. You don't want to be that weirdo just out here in the streets doing randomness. And so then I kind of just like stopped caring about energy or spirituality or anything like that. Then I got to college, and when I became an electrical engineer, I think for me, it was my soul like leading the way. Because if you had asked me as a kid, like, oh, Nicole, are you going to be an electrical engineer? I would have been like, first of all, what is that? Second of all, sounds like a lot of math. No, thank you. And third of all, what? Like, electrical engineer? I'm like, who, what? Why would I do that? Why would I put myself through that much misery? It just does not make sense. Um, but it's like, for me, it was just this deep longing to understand, the world and our consciousness, and like why we're here, and like how does this world even manifest for us in this moment. And I felt like electrical engineering, even though it was very objective, it doesn't at all care about consciousness or like what our subjective experience is. It gave me this framework to understand just energy that we use to do a bunch of different things in the world. So like everything I realized through my degree tied to these spiritual concepts, even though if you talk to these engineers, they're like not spiritual people at all. Like, they're very much like, this is objective, this is all in the physical world, it doesn't matter the role that we play. But I was like also going through this journey of like exploring meditation and like Eastern philosophies, and for me, I recognize a lot of themes. It's just like that these two worlds we're trying to align on, but we're seeing it from different places. And I think that's inspired just deep curiosity around like, how do we actually build technology and like how does it actually create these interesting user experiences. And in the work that I do now at Microsoft, it's very interesting because I work across a few different teams. One is like the user inputs group that does a lot of like when you actually interface with your device, so you're touching, you're writing with a pen, like how does it know that you are asking it to do something and actually responding in a way that you expect. And then I also help out with the connectivity group, which is all like our wireless communication. So how do we actually have connectivity? Like how do you actually access the internet? How do you actually send data on different frequency bands, and they actually like move at the speed of light and are able to generate these experiences in real time? And they all kind of go back to these fundamental ideas of like frequency and like what is the, you know, there's like all of, well, there's a few different ways you can look at it. And I think like there's just all of these similar themes that go across the different technologies that as an engineer, I'm like, oh, this is super interesting. And so, for example, I guess one that maybe can relate, like people can relate to is like our voice and our ears, right? Our voice are able to generate like this unique frequency that falls within a very specific range in like the electromagnetic spectrum. So like on our earth, in this world that we're in, by some magical experience, you could say God, universe, or whatever, there's like, because of the sun that we have that's so close to the earth, we are like bombarded with like a huge spectrum of energy that just comes to us like all the time. And our unique physiology is like tuned for specific bands of that frequency. So like our ears fall into the sound, our throats, you know, also vibrate within that range so we can hear it. Our eyes fall within the visual, you know, like the visual spectrum. But then outside of that, technology is like the way that we're implementing and building technology, even though our bodies are built for like these unique bands, the technology that we build on top of that actually leverages all of the other bands that we're not using just in our like physical day-to-day experiences. And essentially what the engineers are doing are just taking those same ideas and just like magnifying it to a bunch of different use cases. So like in America, you have the FCC. They manage all of like the frequency allocation for the United States. They decide who gets to use what band and for what purpose, depending on what you want to do. Like if you want to send data like really, really far or really, really close, the type of like frequency you would use would change based on like your use case. And so it's interesting like to see how different frequencies we have designed to use it for a specific case that all relates back to our like human experience. And so it's interesting like when people talk about like 5G and their concerns around 5G, or even like currently most, if like you're not using 5G, it's like 2.4 gigahertz is what we use for like the internet. But like when we're thinking about like the refresh rate of your screen, that's 120 hertz or 60 hertz. And there's like all of these different things that are happening that generate all these experiences. And it's all just energy modulation happening at different times, being like enveloped on different signals. There's like all of these things that they do. And it's just like mind blowing because like as a user, you're not thinking about any of that. You're just like, oh, you know, I touched my trackpad. It knows where my finger is. But it's like, how does it know that you're touching it versus like something else? And it's just so interesting to me thinking about like how we're able to engage in this way. Like it's just so like I could just go for hours just like rambling about all this nonsense.
It is so interesting, and it kind of makes me think of how you talked about you're connected with your island and the people there, and how they just kind of just took life slow and paid attention to the details. It seems like you're breaking down to pay attention to the details with this engineering and how it connects. People don't think about, oh, I'm now placing my finger, it's reading my finger, you know. It's just amazing. It all connects together and makes sense.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Technology is a reflection of like our humanity, really and truly. Like everything that we do is because we are how we are. And so we design technology to meet us where we're at. But it's interesting because there's just like all of these themes that show up when you're looking at the big picture. But I think like sometimes when we're not thinking about technology with intention, it can then become this tool of distraction, or this tool for like hate, or like this tool that kind of just like creates more division than unity. And the reason why I feel so lucky to work where I do is because my whole philosophy is really to bring back the humanity to our technology, really bring back this like push for mindfulness when we're using technology, and not have it be this tool that we become sort of a slave to, but really it being a tool that facilitates our consciousness, that facilitates our expression, that allows us to interact with people, reach people, connect with people. Because what I realized like from the island is connection is everything. Like our human to human connection is everything. It's like the most priceless thing, and it drives everything that we do. Like the reason we listen to music is because somebody else made this song that like was an expression of their soul, and you relate to it. And it's like all of these things that we do to just be connected to each other. And yeah, I just want to facilitate more of that, more understanding, more openness, more connection. But using technology is sort of the vehicle to help bring that about, because it's so cool. Like it's just, there's so much you could do with it. And the more you understand it, the more you realize like humans are crazy cool. Like the things that we know and can do are just like mind blowing, that I feel like we don't give ourselves enough credit, like where we're at in our society, and the things that we just take for granted. It's like absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Wow. I love all that you're sharing. Like just the connectedness, I don't know, the relationships there, and how yeah, to use everything for good, like the tools that are given us that have been created, to use them for good, because that's what we're here to on this earth, to support each other and build each other up, not tear each other down. So I love your
Exactly.
view of that.
Yeah, exactly.
So before we close, can you share with everybody how they can connect with you, and they want to get more in touch with you, or learn more about EmpowerU?
Yeah, totally. Well, if you want to connect with me, you can just follow me on Instagram. My handle is Harshpark, so it's like HARSPARC. You can also check out my podcast, because it's called the Chattabox. Like, yeah, it's called the Chatterbox. So, and we have new episodes every Friday, and I try to like go even deeper in some of these like concepts of mindfulness, and how do we actually live greater by like looking within ourselves and like working on our relationship with ourselves. And I also bring on guests from the island that are doing incredible things all over the world, whether they're musicians or photographers or dancers, or like just absolutely incredible and interesting people that can maybe, plant some seeds for thought. And then for EmpowerU, yeah, totally just check out the website, empoweru.online. You can email our team if you have questions, or if you're looking for resources. We're definitely always here to help. Because the goal, like you said, we're here to lift each other up. Like, yeah, you can, get off on like making someone's life miserable, but at the end of the day, you're only going to cause yourself more suffering in the future, because eventually you're going to have to like deal with that. And for me, I feel like this beautiful journey of life is how do we see our suffering for what it is, and how are we able to be more in the present, and to sort of live life and not be as attached to life, and just like really be able to experience it for the fullness that it is, because life is a beautiful thing. And it sometimes really sucks when I think we get in mental spaces where we feel like we're alone, or we're misunderstood, or like the world doesn't get us. But really, like, we're here to be connected. The fact that we can even experience each other, the fact that we can even engage with each other, I think is a gift that most of us really and truly take for granted. But I think once you recognize sort of like the gift of our consciousness, the gift that we have this unique experience through our own bodies, like it's something that I don't think we should take lightly. And, we should really like try to enjoy it to the most that we can, because that's why we're here, like we're here to have fun. Like we're here to have a good time. We're here to grow and learn. And sometimes it's painful. But when you have community and you have support, you can get through anything. And I think like that's what the island showed me the most, is community is everything. And I think that's honestly my biggest challenge with America, is this individualism, this toxic individualism. I'm like, guys, we need each other. We do.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Like, you don't have to do it all alone. You don't need to put that burden on yourself. Like, let your community show up for you, because we're here. Like, we're here with love and open arms. So just gotta be willing to be vulnerable enough to be yourself and let your, you know, vibration attract your tribe, like they say.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot to it, is people are afraid to just be themselves. And that's the key. It's just be who you are, and and reach out for help if you need it, or the lift.
Exactly. Like life is too great. Like there's so many great things you could experience, try new things. Like it's never the end. It's just the beginning.
Yeah.
You choose it that way. So yeah. But definitely reach out, guys. Like if you have anything at all, I'm always here to chat. So definitely looking forward to, you know, hearing from some of you folks.
This has been such a pleasure to talk to you, Nicole. Thank you so much for being
on. Likewise.